Dr. Lucretia Cook, but you can call me Dr. LaLa. Welcome back to another episode of the Revolve Podcast, where grief and loss are a journey and not a final destination. And so today, I would like to talk about digital burnout and emotional overload. Yes, because we live in a world that never turns off. 24-hour news cycles, access to media 24 hours a day, whether it's on television or your phone. We have access to media 24 hours, and it's a never-ending cycle. So it's a world of constant notifications, endless scrolling, and comparison culture, and the pressure to always be available. And this combination of things creates a level of emotional and nervous system fatigue that many of us don't even recognize. I know, right? And so let's talk about it, because many folks get burned out and you don't even realize that's the problem. So let's talk about digital burnout, what it is, how it affects your emotional and spiritual health, and then most importantly, how to reclaim your peace. Yes, how to reclaim your peace in this world that demands your attention 24/7. So let's talk about it. What is digital burnout? And it's not just being tired of your phone. It's the emotional and physical exhaustion that comes from being constantly connected. Because how many of us, when you wake up in the mornings, you turn your alarm off and then you immediately start scrolling? How many of us are guilty of that? All throughout the day, it's constantly going off. Notifications, notifications, notifications. You're getting caught up, something on Facebook got your attention, Instagram, TikTok, something got your attention. And what started off as just a moment to watch a video, and then you look up and you've been scrolling for over an hour. Right? And then at bedtime, you're looking at your phone until you fall asleep. Sometimes you don't even put it down. You fall asleep with it in your hand. And so in essence, our brains are never getting a break because it's input, 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 input. And because we're constantly putting in input, our nervous systems are staying activated. So then our nervous systems are running all the time too. In this day and age, we consume more information in a day than previous generations consumed in a month. And I really don't even think we really even think about how much we really consume now, because it's so readily available, and then our children as well. Telling my age here, back when I was growing up, there really wasn't much to do outside of going outside and playing or reading a book. In which I was blessed in that I grew up in the country with lots of cousins. So we had never-ending games of kickball, hide and go seek, Red Rover, Ring Around the Rosie. I can't tell you how many games started in the mornings and ended late into the evening when the street lights came on. And then when we would go inside to watch television, we just had a few minutes of cartoons, and then maybe we would watch the Cosby Show. And then even as I got older, Martin, Living Single, New York Undercover. But even that, those shows only came on certain days out of the week. And then you would have to wait till the next week to catch the next episode. So you didn't get this opportunity to just sit and binge watch an entire season of a show. And so now we have access to all of this information. And let's just be honest, there are some really interesting things on social media. I can't tell you how much I have learned on TikTok. Yeah, I love TikTok because I've learned so much about different cultures, different communities. But again, too much of anything can be a bad thing. And so I'm not saying that being on socials and consuming media in and of itself is a bad thing, but I am saying that we have to be mindful because too much of anything can be bad for you. And sometimes it can become too much. And again, sometimes you're being affected by the stuff that you're consuming and you don't even realize it. And sometimes that's because people really don't understand what's happening as it's happening. Sometimes that looks like you just think you're tired, but really you're overstimulated. Yeah. Sometimes it can look like you feel like you need more discipline to get things done. But really, you need to rest. Discipline isn't the issue. It's the energy. You need to get rest. The assumption that everybody else is handling things better than you are. But listen, many folks are drowning silently. A lot of people just aren't talking about it. Right? Digital burnout is a very real thing. And it affects our emotional clarity, relationships, your spiritual life, and sometimes even the ability to help yourself think or to hear yourself think. Because there's always going. Your mind is always going, and there's always this extra noise. And because your mind is always going, because there's always input, because your nervous system is always active, it may actually start to affect your emotions. You might become irritable because when our brains are overstimulated, it's harder to regulate your emotions. It's just a part of it. Sometimes you may feel anxious for no reason. Things that don't normally bother you aggravate you. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you become numb and nothing even registers. And it's because your system is overloaded. You may struggle to focus. You may feel overwhelmed by things that are really simple, that on a good day, you do them with your eyes closed and one of your hands tied behind your back. But now even the things that are second nature are a challenge. And because social media is a highlight reel, Comparison becomes constant and automatic. Yep. So let's just sit with that for just a brief second. Social media is a highlight reel. And so when we get on social media and we see all these people living these amazing lives, and they are living amazing lives, but they also have challenges too. Facing challenges is just a part of the human experience. So it doesn't matter how successful you are, life is gonna bring challenges. It's just, again, that's just a part of it. And the thing about social media is most folks only show the good parts. They only show the exciting things. Most folks don't show the hard parts, the crying in the shower, the kids are cutting up, you and your spouse aren't getting along. Most people don't show those things, but when you're constantly taking in that information, you begin to have a false sense of what reality is. Yeah. And it's wonderful to be able to see how other people live and see what different cultures have going on and all of the things. But it's also important to realize that your life is just as beautiful too. And that it's normal to have challenges. And so you have to be careful about comparing your life to the next person's life. Because all you're getting is what they're showing you. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. None. And even as much as you think you know, you don't really know. And so that life you think you want to live, you might not want to pay the price for what it takes to live it. So we have to remember to be thankful for what we have and the life that we live. Because all of those things affect our emotions and we don't even realize it a lot of times. Yeah, you may not even realize that this thing that you've been watching on social media is part of what's causing you to be so anxious, that may be causing you to be dissatisfied with life. And there is a difference between allowing things to motivate you to see a life or a career, an elevation, to watch it happen and to allow that to motivate you to make positive changes. There's a difference between using information that you're getting to motivate you and using it to punch down on yourself. Right? There's a distinct difference in that. And so again, digital burnout doesn't just affect your emotions. It can also have physical signs. Our bodies keep the score of everything. When your nervous system is overstimulated, you have trouble sleeping. Your muscles stay tense. And we all know that constantly looking at a screen isn't good for our eyes. That's why many people have the glasses to help. I think it helps with blue light to help decrease the level of strain that you have on your eyes. You get brain fog. Sometimes you're tired and wired at the same time. So you're exhausted, but for whatever reason, you can't rest. Headaches. All of these things are signals from your body saying it needs a break. And then it also affects us spiritually. Because if we are constantly taking in information and we're constantly having all of this noise, it makes it a little bit more difficult to hear God's voice when he's talking to us. It makes being able to be still a little bit harder. Because your mind is always going. Your mind may feel cluttered. And so when your mind is cluttered, that still small voice is a little bit harder to hear. And then not only is it difficult to hear God's voice, sometimes you can't even hear your own. It may cause a spiritual disconnection where you feel distant from the Father because there's so much excess noise there that it clutters up your connection with him. And it's not because the Father has moved. It's not because his thoughts towards you have changed, but because we have so much extra noise. So the practice of stillness, we've talked about that before, about it being a spiritual discipline. This is where that comes into play. So that we can be still, so that we can tune out the noise. So even though we have all of this stimulation, we're still able to enter a space of peace. And scripture gives us a framework for that so that we can reclaim peace. Because scripture consistently invites us to rest, stillness, and intentional withdrawal. There were times in scripture where Jesus withdrew to quiet places. In Psalms 46 and 10, we're encouraged to be still and know that I am God. In Matthew 11 and 28, it says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." And let's not forget the Sabbath. The Bible tells us to remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. So the Sabbath isn't a suggestion, right? That was a directive to rest. Because it is something that the Father needed. He needed rest, right? In creation, he rested. And so if the Father, in completing his task, and he needed rest at the end of the week, doesn't it make sense that we might need rest too? Stillness isn't laziness. When we are still, it allows us to rest, to quiet the noise in our minds, quiet the noise in our spirits. It allows us to hear the Father and to get in alignment with his will for us. So, what are some practical tools to reduce digital burnout? Set screen-free hours. Set time aside each day where there's no screen time. Turn off non-essential notifications. Create a morning routine that doesn't include your phone. Limit doom scrolling. And some of the apps, some of the social media applications, you can actually set timers and limits on the amount of screen time you have each day. And so once you reach that limit, it'll actually send you an alert saying, hey, you've already reached your quota for the day. Put in an access code to either stay on the application or shut it down. Take breaks from social media. Taking a break from social media really does wonders for protecting your mental health. There is so much, and I know we spoke earlier about comparison culture. And that is totally a thing and something to be mindful of. But also, even if you don't struggle with comparison culture, there is also the fact that there is so much going on in the world. It seems as though negative information is just a part of the algorithm and you have to seek out positivity, if I can say it that way. That's how it feels sometimes. So taking social media breaks is a healthy practice. All of these things will help you to reclaim your peace. And then therapy can also play a role in helping you reduce your digital overload. It helps you to understand how digital overload can affect your emotions, your relationships, and your self-worth. It can help you identify triggers, build boundaries, and definitely to develop healthier rhythms around your digital use. And then it also supports us in healing our nervous systems. And a healthy nervous system is necessary for long-term emotional stability. And so these are just a few things to consider as you continue to use social media, the internet, the constant news cycles. So just something to think about. Where do you need to create more quiet in your life? Where can you create more stillness? And so as we close out, I want to encourage you to find some time where you do have stillness, where you do take a moment to shut off your phone, Decrease those notifications. Because all of those things matter. Creating a morning rhythm that doesn't include your phone, where you're scrolling for an hour without even thinking about it. Or even setting limits to remind you to steward your social media time well. Find other things that you can do to engage. So, until next time, keep choosing healing, keep choosing joy. I love y'all. Bye.